Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups and it's time for Robbie's Top 5. Today, Top 5 Horror Comics. That's right everybody, welcome to Robbie's Top 5 here at Pop Culture Philosophers. Today I'm going to be talking about my personal top 5 favorite horror comic books of all time. Halloween's right around the corner and it's always good to have a nice spooky fun time, especially reading a comic book. First of all, I want to get to some nice honorable mentions. Tomb of Dracula, fantastic Marvel Comics from the 70s. It's where Blade was introduced, a personal favorite of mine. Frankenstein by Roy Thomas and artist extraordinaire Bernie Wrightson. Fantastic stuff, beautiful, glorious artwork, and new ones like Infidel, Gideon Falls, just of this year, but great horror comics. And of course, I got to put a spotlight on Scott Snyder's Severed. Those are just some honorable mentions, but now I'm about to reveal my personal top 5 favorite horror comics of all time. At number 5, we got Tales from the Crypt from EC Comics. This is pre-code days. This is really fun, classic horror type stuff in comic book form. It has amazing artwork from artists such as Johnny Craig, Wally Wood, and others. Superstars in and of their own right. They would go on to do even more in the industry. The Comic Code Authority, when it came in, it kind of shut down EC. But these were nice little short stories, Tales from the Crypt. I'm sure you're aware of the TV show and the movies, things like that. But it had the Crypt Keeper. EC had this whole line of horror comics at the time that were basically the same. There was Haunt of Fear, Vault of Horror. They're all really good. They don't really kind of distinguish themselves one from the other. They even have their own version of the Crypt Keeper, and they all kind of cross over into other issues, but the great classic horror type stuff. Tales from the Crypt is just iconic. The TV show that came after, that's iconic. Great, classic, fun horror comic book stuff. You don't get more classic than this. At number 4, we have Lock and Key from IDW Comics, written by Joe Hill and illustrated by Gabriel Rodriguez. This book is fantastic. It's basically about this family after a tragedy. The father of the family has been murdered. They move across country to his childhood home. It's called Key House. It's this big giant house in Lovecraft, Massachusetts, so it's definitely got some H.P. Lovecraft type vibes. In this house, there's all kinds of doors and mysterious keys. And the first key they find, for instance, is the ghost key. If you find the ghost door and use the ghost key when you go through it, your body dies and your ghost is free to move around, right? And they get a whole bunch of other keys. There's a key that unlocks your head so you can pull out memories or put things into it. There's a key that turns you into a giant. There's a key that makes you control a shadow army. Fantastic type stuff. Great horror, dark fantasy. Really good, but it's also centered around this family and their struggle, and they're dealing with what happened to their father and that tragedy, and how that tragedy follows them across the country. It's great. It's got a great villain, a nice pace throughout it, and like I said, it's a very, very nice story about a family, but it's got thrills all throughout it. Very cool concept, really cool book, very well done. Great artwork, great writing, fantastic stuff. At number 3, we've got Afterlife with Archie, written by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa and illustrated by Francisco Francavilla. I'm a huge Francisco Francavilla fan. This shirt is illustrated by him, for instance. I love his artwork in this series. It's basically the Archie characters in a zombie story, but it's not a survival type focused zombie story like Walking Dead or something, but it's a horror type focused zombie story like some of the Romero type stuff, right? So you take these Archie characters, which if you read Archie comics or if you grew up reading it like I did, you know these characters, right? They feel like your friends. And then to put them in this very dark scenario where it's just straight up in your face zombie type stuff, but not done in like that modern survival type way, but very horror, man. And Francisco Francavilla's artwork is so great. The coloring is astounding. It provides such an atmosphere to it. And the book has this tinge of melancholy. It is so sad. This book is so sad, but I think it works so well. It's one of the most absolutely splendid horror comics I've ever read. At number 2, we've got Saga of the Swamp Thing, written by Alan Moore, with artwork by Stephen Bissette, John Tuttlebin, and Rick Veitch. Seriously, you know Swamp Thing's going to be on this list. Alan Moore redefined not just the character of Swamp Thing, but the comic books themselves. Fantastic stuff. The artwork by Bissette and Tuttlebin is just beautiful, luscious, elegant, organic, and it fits the flow of the story. Alan Moore came in and took what was already a really good horror comic book that was created by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson and just elevated it to this point of sophistication that nobody probably even saw coming. Really great stuff, but it still gets in your face with its horror. It's got some of my favorite comic book vampire and werewolf stories are in the pages of this. Alan Moore, of course, is a treasure in the comic book industry at times. Watchmen, V for Vendetta, things like that. A fantastic writer with some fantastic, beautiful, most luscious artists out there. Great stuff. Really suited for the character, redefined the character, introduced John Constantine. Great stuff. If you've never read Saga of the Swamp Thing, you really have to. And at number 1, Hellboy, Mike Mignola. I can't have anything else here. Hellboy is one of my absolute favorite comic books of all time. It's definitely my favorite new character of the last 30 years or something like that. Hellboy is just great, and it's steeped in rich folklore, and it's very authentic because of that. Very authentic ghost stories, vampire tales, werewolves, demons, H.P. Lovecraft type old god, elder god type stuff. Everything you can think of as horror is thrown into Hellboy at some point, and the surrounding books like BPRD, Lobster Johnson. It's fun. It's got a classic pulp type style to it. Mike Mignola is one of my absolute favorite comic book artists of all time. Seriously, it's him and Jack Kirby right up there at the top. Fantastic line work. It's simple, at least it appears simple, but it's deceptively simple. It's beautiful. It's the use of blacks, like so much darkness per page. His panel composition, the flow of the story. Mike Mignola, I don't know if anybody can tell a story graphically through comic books like Mike Mignola can. I love the character of Hellboy. He's basically a son of hell who's trying to fight against his nature to be this eventual ruler of hell and to destroy the earth. He's supposed to bring the apocalypse, but he's just a regular guy, and he's like a blue collar type worker, but his job is to go out and fight monsters and things like that. Great characters, a great world that gets built up around it. The Mignolaverse, as we call it, is so rich and just as rich and just as filled as the DC universe or the Marvel universe. Great comic books, something you could really invest a lot of time in. If you've never read Hellboy, I cannot recommend it enough. It feels classic, it feels sophisticated, it feels fresh, it feels modern, it feels fun, it feels scary. It's very atmospheric. The colors by Dave Stewart throughout, fantastic stuff. Even when Duncan Fegredo and Richard Corbin, who is of course a horror master illustrator in comic books themselves, even when they come in to kind of take on some of the artistic duties from Mignola towards the end or later part of the series, it just shines. It just shines. Even the worst, most just who cares Hellboy stories are some of the absolute best horror comic books out there. That's what I think. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Let me know what you think about these picks, and I want to know what are your personal top 5 favorite horror comics down in the comments down below. Let's get the conversation going. Maybe we can recommend some things to each other and really have a nice, fun, spooky time reading comic books this Halloween season and beyond. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to join us in a couple weeks for a next Robbie's Top 5 video where I'll be listing my top 5 favorite Superman villains. So I'm very excited to share that one. I've been wanting to write that blog for about 2 years now, so I decided I'm just going to do a video about it. So thank you guys so much once again for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Check us out at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts and a whole lot more. And yeah, that podcast is returning in 2019. I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep top 5.